Upfront and Outspoken with Bob Williams. If you love the Constitution,
man is not free unless government is limited.
If you love freedom,
as government expands, liberty contracts.
If you believe in personal responsibility, if you believe America is still the greatest nation on earth, then get ready for an experience you'll never forget. This is Upfront and Outspoken. Here's your host, Bob Williams.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag, rule their red, white, and blue.
And good morning. Welcome back. This is Upfront Outspoken. Of course, I'm your loudmouth host, Bob Williams. Glad to have you along on this Friday. Let's get right into the weather for today. Showers, thunderstorms, mainly after 7 a.m. Some of the storms could produce heavy rainfall, high near 81 degrees. For tonight, showers and possibly a thunderstorm, low around 50 for tomorrow. Showers likely and possibly a thunderstorm before 1 p.m. Currently outside the studios, we have clear and 72 degrees, and it is clear and 73 degrees in Poto, thanks to our own in-house weatherman, Scott Clark. Now, everybody knows, if you listen to my show, and who doesn't? I mean, if you don't, I don't know where the hell you are. But anybody who knows my show knows that every Friday, I have a very special guest. I love talking to this guy. He is the host of Passionate Justice, which you hear here every Saturday at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm talking none other than Mr. Jonathan Wolfman. Welcome back, Jonathan. How you doing this morning?
Bob, good morning to all of you out there. I hope all you guys out wherever you are have better weather than we do in the middle Atlantic states. It is overcast and dark, and it is promising fall and winter here.
Well, it's that time of year. What can I say? But Jonathan, I'm sure you've been keeping up on the news and all the situations that have developed with the Ebola situation, along with what's going on with Turkey. Their inactivity or unwillingness to get involved in fighting with ISIS, and even though one of the towns was right on their border. So I want to get into something that we don't hear much about lately, and I kind of want to get your opinion or your, how can I say, your observations. How come, we're fighting ISIS and yet Hamas suddenly is in the back seat? Now you can't tell me they're not planning to strike Israel again. What's your observation reading these?
Well, first of all, a comparison between ISIS and Hamas is a good one, and the only reason I think that we don't, the only reason I think we do not really think of them in the same breath is because we know that ISIS, for reasons, and I think it has oil revenues. I'll put it this way. Tell me, audience, whether you think this makes sense. ISIS is exactly what Hamas would want to be if they had the money.
I agree. If they had the money, they would probably do the same thing. If they had the funding and the material, I'm sure that they would do everything they can to eradicate Israel.
And I would be shocked if some of the people, some of the so-called outside soldiers who come and flock and join ISIS, wouldn't you be a little surprised, gang, out there, if some of those guys weren't Hamas guys who thought, well, wait a minute, I'd rather be with the Yankees than be with the team at the bottom of the cellar?
Well, you might as well say the Chicago Cubs. I mean, come on.
Okay, the Cubs. Okay.
But the thing is, we don't hear a whole lot anymore about Hamas. We heard a little bit of it when Ben Netanyahu was at the United Nations. We heard him, a great speech I thought was very, very appropriate. We heard a little bit about it when President Obama met with Netanyahu, but we haven't heard anything since then. And it seems that Hamas, which is in and of itself a terrorist organization, has suddenly taken a back seat. Is this giving Hamas the time they need to rebuild their infrastructure, to rebuild their munition supply, and to plan future attacks against Israel?
I don't think there's any doubt that whenever there is a news cycle lull, which is exactly what you've described, Hamas and its supporters, particularly in Iran, use that time to try to get weapons past the Israelis. I think they do, from their point of view, not a remarkably good job of it. I think the Israelis and their army and their secret services tend to do a relatively good job. You're not going to stop everything, but they end up stopping quite a lot. And that leads me to say this to our audience. You've heard one of the complaints from Hamas for years that Israel will not allow humanitarian shipments of all sorts of things, from food to building material, all those kinds of things. They say Israel stops because they really are trying to wipe us out. They're really trying to exterminate us. What they don't say, what Hamas and its apologists will not say, is that you wonder how many crates of eggs that, for example, may go into the West Bank, where the PLO runs things, and on the Gaza Strip, where Hamas runs things. How many of those crates of eggs or bundles of this or that, which are legitimate, have parts for rockets in them, have grenades in them, have ammo in them? People need to understand that the Israel Secret Services, there's nothing in it for Israel or its secret services to starve the Palestinians. There's nothing in it for them. The only thing that would be in it for them would be to be called legitimately exterminators.
You know, the one question you brought up a very interesting point there when you were talking about the food and humanitarian aid that would be coming into the area and potentially harbor, shall we say, munitions and all that against, destined to be against Israel. You know, my question is, why can't the Israeli government say, okay, we're going to allow the humanitarian in, as much humanitarian aid as possible, and however, we are going to inspect every single vehicle that comes through. Granted, it will delay it some, and I'm not going to say it won't, it will delay it some, but it gets the vital supplies they need to feed their people. And I'd be careful about sending cement and that in there. That's one thing I'd be a little leery about. But allow this stuff through there, even though it might delay it a little bit. So Israel is protecting itself. But it seems Hamas says right out, no, we want these borders open, unrestricted. So why won't Hamas, why can't Israel, I'm going to put it that way, why can't Israel say, okay, you want the humanitarian aid, send as many trucks as you want to this checkpoint, we're going to go through the trucks. But one key, we'll open it to that point, allow all these trucks with supplies to come in, but we want to inspect the trucks first.
Well, that would make sense, except that Hamas and its apologists have convinced enough people, enough countries in the world, that setting up such a system would be making into, in effect, a prison that is run by the Israelis. And I will tell you, too, that there are some in the Israeli government who are not interested in being seen as simply prison guards of the largest prison on earth. You see what I'm saying? You have upwards of 2 million people living in Gaza, and such a situation where everything that goes in and out is guarded, you might as well put bars around the whole place. You have to have some degree of back and forth. And the problem is that Hamas, regardless of what it has said in the past about, well, we really only want peaceful goods coming back and forth. It's very much like Iran saying, well, we don't really need your inspectors for our nuclear plants because you've really got to trust us that we just want energy. And the problem is the UN and the U.S. and other countries could move east and set up inspection sites everywhere around cities that are known in Iran to have nuclear plants, and there are more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And yet then what you have is all of a sudden there's a hue and outcry, oh, you're turning Iran into a prison camp.
Well, come on now, Jonathan. I mean, give me a break here. You've got Hamas, which is a known terrorist organization. You know, and I have said to myself, I've got my personal opinion about Hamas. And I'm not saying all the Palestinians, in Gaza or the West Bank or whatever you want to call it, are aligning themselves with Hamas. But what I am saying is, why didn't Netanyahu just go in there and say, all right, guys, you fired these missiles on us. You know, we've got the public support behind us. We're going to eradicate you before you do that to us. Why did he stop?
And the reason that doesn't always play, I mean, you're asking a great question. Bob is asking a great question, all of you out there. But the reason it doesn't play is because Hamas is an elected entity.
Screw the election. They're the terrorist group. Let's get rid of them.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And believe me, there are parties and leadership in Israel who would love to do that. But when you have an elected leadership, what's the rest of the world going to say when we already know they're not in love with the Jewish state to begin with?
Okay, here's my question. All right.
You and I take a more or less non-favoritism look on this.
All right, well, here's my question to you.
The rest of the world sees it.
Okay, here's my question to you then, Jonathan. Okay, example. We have Hamas here in Mexico. Let's say Mexico's not Mexico. Let's say it's controlled by Hamas. Right on our own border. What the hell do you think we would do if we had these missiles coming in? We'd go in there and bomb the piss out of them, kill anyone that was shooting these missiles at us, and eradicate them. That's the American way. Okay, that's the American way.
What we would do, northern Mexico would be a wasteland.
Exactly. All right, just that's the end of it. All right. Why didn't Netanyahu, who knows who these leaders are, you know, because you cannot tell me the Israeli intelligence. I mean, these guys are brilliant when it comes to intelligence gathering. We know who these people are. We know who the radicals are. All right, Mr. Netanyahu, you know, our parliament says we need decisive action. All right, we're going to go in there. We're going to take these guys out. We're going to take and cut them off at the head. Why didn't he do that? Instead, after 60 days of the war, he stopped short of eradicating the problem.
Well, there certainly was sentiment within Israel not to stop. But when the problem you have is when you're already seen by the European powers and by other countries as the bully, and Israel, like it or not, is seen in those capitals as the bully.
But they're not the bully. That's the whole thing, Jonathan. They're not the bully. They're defending their country.
You know I agree. But when you are seen as the bully, whether it's fair or not, and the other side, the group that says, oh, we've been bullied, oh, look what they've done to us for 50 days, oh, oh, we've only sent over a few rockets.
A
and
few?
anyway, most of them don't hit population areas. We're just poor little us. When you have those people then saying, okay, we'll stop now, to then go out and do what we're suggesting, and that is Israel saying, all right, no more, we're not playing this game anymore, we're going to take you off at the head, the international consequences for Israel would have been devastating.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, Jonathan, it's Hamas who used human shields. It is Hamas who fired the missiles from hospitals, from school grounds, from my God, it was even in the news that they stored ammunition in a UN area. I mean, my God. Had I been Netanyahu, to be perfectly honest with you, I would have said, piss on it. You want to shoot them from the school? All right, we're going to level it. You're the ones that are causing the problem. You're the one that's using
some schools. They've had no choice.
Right, and then what we see in the mainstream media is, oh, they killed some people. This is Hamas propaganda. And they used it in their favor to get Israel to back off.
That's exactly right, but it's also not just the media that says, oh, poor Hamas. It's other national capitals, and Israel, because it wants to be part of the international community, cannot completely say, fine, let's get you so mad at me, France, Germany, Italy, Great Britain. Yeah, we know that you say you don't like Hamas, but we know that at a certain point, all those countries will call all of their trade agreements with Jerusalem, with Tel Aviv, into question, because there is extraordinary, quite frankly, I'm going to say it bluntly, there is extraordinary organized international Islamic pressure on those capitals.
And I agree with you, Jonathan. As much as I hate to say it, I'm not disagreeing with you or saying I hate to say it to you. But what I'm saying is you're right. I mean, Israel has to play a balancing act, and as much as you and I may agree that Israel should have went in there and that's enough. That's enough. You're right. The allies that they have, like you said, France, UK, United States for one, and we know the relations between the United States and Israel is strained already. They can ill afford all that, but I wish I'd be bloodthirsty in that respect, but people need to understand. What if this happened right in our backyard? Would the United States sit back?
People, your analogy is so great, Bob, because it immediately gets Americans thinking the way Israelis are forced to think. I want all of you out there not just to say, oh, Bob made an interesting comparison. I want you to realize that missiles lobbed into Texas, into Arizona, into New Mexico daily for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, that is what Israeli people are living with. And the only way you could put up with it is if you accepted the propaganda that sometimes is accepted in European capitals that says, well, Jews really don't deserve to have their state. Yeah, we know what Hitler did. It was really unfortunate, but Jews really don't deserve to have their state because they're troublemakers.
I don't buy that argument. But you're right. I don't buy that argument, but yet you're right. The other governments do believe that argument. They really, really do believe that argument. Once again, Jonathan, our time is almost gone. It is. We always have a blast here when you're coming on because we hit on issues that other mainstream refuses to touch on, and we hopefully are waking up a few people.
You are absolutely right. And let me just quickly say to the gang out there, Bob brings up stuff that you just don't hear discussed this way. The way he frames things on so-called mainstream, you just don't. You are lucky to be listening right now. Not because of me, but because of how Bob frames these issues for us.
Well, once again, Jonathan, like I said, our time is almost up, and I want to thank you for coming on. And I invite everybody, listen in. Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, Passion and Justice, of course, by host Jonathan Wolfman. He is also a author. Now, Jonathan, tell them where they can get your book.
Oh, you can get the book at Amazon.com. It's a good deal, and it's Passionate Justice, a progressive memoir and essays, and it is just as outspoken as everything you hear on this network.
Well, I appreciate it, Jonathan. And with that, folks, of course... It's time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned because none other than the one, the only Ed Till will be coming with that at the bottom of the hour. Stay tuned. Until Monday morning, 6 a.m., take care of yourselves.